Welcome to our channel. Hollywood Movie Review. Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga 2024 movie review. Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga is a 2024 epic post-apocalyptic action film directed and produced by George Miller, who wrote the screenplay with Nico Lathouris. It is the fifth installment in the Mad Max franchise, and the first not focused on Max Rokitansky, instead a spin-off prequel to Mad Max, Fury Road, 2015, and an origin story for Furiosa. Starring Anya Taylor-Joy and Alyla Browne as said character and set years before Fury Road, the film follows her life for over a decade, from her kidnapping by the forces of warlord Dementus, Chris Hemsworth, to her ascension to the rank of Imperator. Tom Burke also stars as Praetorian Jack, a military commander who befriends Furiosa. Several Fury Road cast members return in supporting roles, including John Howard, Nathan Jones, and Angus Sampson reprising their characters. The film begins in what can be seen as a green paradise of a solar punk future and quickly moves to the more traditional diesel punk, which the Mad Max franchise is known for. Miller initially intended to shoot Furiosa back-to-back with Fury Road, but the former spent several years in development hell amidst salary disputes with Warner Brothers Pictures, Fury Road's distributor. Several crew members from Fury Road returned for Furiosa, including Lathouris, producer Doug Mitchell, composer Tom Holkenborg, costume designer Jenny Beavan, and editor Margaret Sixel, Miller's wife. Filming took place in Australia from June to October 2022. Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga premiered at the 77th Cannes Film Festival on May 15, 2024. It was released theatrically in Australia on May 23, 2024 and in the United States the following day. The film received highly positive reviews from critics and multiple award nominations. It was named one of the top 10 films of 2024 by the National Board of Review, but was a box office bomb, grossing $174.4 million against its budget of $168 million. Decades after the apocalypse, Australia is a radioactive wasteland and the green place of many mothers is one of the last remaining areas with fresh water and plant cultivation. Raiders uncover the green place while two children, Furiosa and Valkyrie, are picking peaches. Furiosa tries to sabotage their motorcycles, but the raiders capture her as a prize for Dementus, leader of the biker horde. Furiosa's mother Mary Jabasa pursues the raiders to the horde's camp to rescue Furiosa, but Dementus tracks them down. Mary stays behind to buy Furiosa time to escape and gives her a peach pit to remember her by, but Furiosa refuses to leave Mary behind. Dementus forces Furiosa to watch her mother's crucifixion and torture at the hands of Dementus Lieutenant the Octoboss. Haunted by his own family's death, Dementus adopts Furiosa as his daughter. She tattoos a star chart to the green place on her left arm to find her way home. Sometime after, Dementus besieges the Citadel, another settlement with fresh water and plants. However, the horde is repelled by the War Boys, the fanatical army of Citadel warlord Immortan Joe. Dementus uses a Trojan horse strategy to capture Gastown, an oil refinery that supplies the Citadel with gasoline, from Joe's brother. At peace negotiations, during which Joe's brother is accidentally killed, Joe recognizes Dementus's authority over Gastown and increases its supplies of food and water in exchange for the horde's organic mechanic and Furiosa. Afterwards, Joe imprisons Furiosa with his stable of wives inside a vault. After Joe's son Rictus shows an attraction towards her, Furiosa devises a plan to escape. One night, Rictus breaks Furiosa out of Joe's vault to rape her, but she slips from his grasp using a wig made from her own hair and disappears. Disguised as a mute war boy, Furiosa works her way up the ranks of Joe's men for over a decade. Furiosa helps build the War Rig, a heavily armed supply tanker that can withstand raider attacks in the lawless wasteland. Furiosa plans to escape by hiding on the rig when Joe sends his top driver, Praetorian Jack, on a supply run. Disillusioned by Dementus's callousness, the Octoboss goes rogue and launches an air assault on the rig. His mortifiers slaughter the rig's entire crew and destroy Furiosa's hidden motorcycle, but Furiosa and Jack team up to defeat them. Furiosa tries to carjack the rig and drive home, but Jack easily thwarts her. However, he recognizes her potential and offers to train her to escape if she helps him rebuild his crew. Furiosa becomes Jack's second in command and is promoted to Praetorian. She and Jack develop a bond and resolve to escape together. They see an opportunity when Joe decides to attack Gastown, which Dementus has mismanaged to near ruin. Joe orders Furiosa and Jack to collect weapons and ammunition from the Bullet Farm, an Allied mining facility. However, Dementus, having already taken possession of the farm, ambushes them when they arrive. Furiosa and Jack barely escape, and Furiosa's left arm is injured. Dementus chases them down and has Jack dragged to death. Furiosa escapes her chains by severing her own injured arm, sacrificing her star map. A lone man A watches from afar as Furiosa struggles back to the Citadel, where she and Joe's aide the People Eater form a strategy to avoid a trap planned by Dementus. Instead, Dementus is lured into a trap at the Citadel, and the war boys crush the Horde. Having lost her path home, Furiosa shaves her head and builds a mechanical prosthetic in place of her severed arm. Furiosa pursues the fleeing Dementus. After an extended chase, Furiosa subdues Dementus in the desert. She imprisons Dementus in the Citadel and uses his still-living body as fertilizer to grow a peach tree from her mother's pit. Joe promotes Furiosa to Imperator and gives her command of a new war rig. She meets Joe's 5 breeder wives in the vault where Joe once held her prisoner and shows them a peach from the tree. The night before another supply run, the 5 wives hide in Furiosa's rig. Director George Miller and co-writer Nico Lathouris spent over 15 years writing the script for Mad Max, Fury Road, 2015, and developed backstories for every character, particularly co-protagonist Imperator Furiosa. Miller and Lathouris eventually wrote a Furiosa-centered screenplay, which actress Charlize Theron used as a reference for her performance in Fury Road. According to Miller, Furiosa probably takes place after Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, 1985, but the Mad Max franchise has no strict chronology. The first trailer of the film, released on November 30, 2023, stated that Furiosa takes place 45 years after the collapse. In July 2010, Miller announced plans to shoot Fury Road back-to-back with a live-action prequel film entitled Mad Max, Furiosa, but, during pre-production, it was decided to shoot only Fury Road. At one point, Miller and Lathouris hoped to turn the Furiosa screenplay into an anime film directed by Mahiro Maeda, who had previously worked on The Animatrix, 2003, Neon Genesis Evangelion, 1995-96, and Porco Rosso, 1992. In May 2015, Miller stated that if Fury Road became successful, he would develop 2 more films. In November 2017, Miller's production company filed a lawsuit against Warner Bros. Over a Fury Road salary dispute, which delayed the production of any additional entries in the franchise. In July 2019, Miller revealed that a Furiosa film was still being planned in addition to 2 Mad Max sequels. By March 2020, Miller and Warner Bros. Settled their lawsuit and began casting the Furiosa prequel, which Miller intended to make after 3,000 Years of Longing, 2022. It was reported that the film would take place over a time frame of 15 years, depicting Furiosa's backstory of how she was displaced from her home and spent her life trying to get back. Multiple Fury Road crew members agreed to return for the film, including composer Tom Holkenborg, costume designer Jenny Beavan, editor Margaret Sixel, makeup designer Leslie Vanderwalt, production designer Colin Gibson, no relation to original Mad Max star Mel Gibson, and sound mixer Ben Osmo. Beavan, Sixel, Vanderwalt, Gibson, and Osmo had all previously won Academy Awards for their work on Fury Road. In 2020, Miller said that the semi-retired John Seale had agreed to return as cinematographer, but Seale retired after shooting Miller's 3,000 Years of Longing, explaining that he wanted to spend more time with his grandchildren. Simon Duggan took over as Furiosa's cinematographer. George was definitely looking to find an Australian cinematographer, Duggan recalled. PJ Fuathan told him, "Look, it's a no-brainer, just get Simon to come in and do it," and George trusted him. George knew the work I was doing and thought it was amazing, so when we first met, we just wanted to talk about the Australian industry, the people we knew and the experiences we had. And we knew that Fury Road was the starting point to the look and feel of what Furiosa was going to be, but only a starting point. Village Roadshow Pictures, which had co-financed Fury Road, was credited in initial marketing material for Furiosa, with its involvement also acknowledged by an official press kit related to the film and a press release by the Cannes Film Festival. However, following its premiere, all mentions of the company were omitted from promotions and the film itself. In May 2024, a box office report by Deadline Hollywood stated that Warner Bros. Is all in on Furiosa and financed the bulk of the film's budget without co-financiers, such as Village Roadshow, most likely the result of a content dispute related to Warner Bros.' simultaneous release strategy. Followed in 2021, Miller sought to cast a younger actress for the role in lieu of using de-aging technology for Theron, explaining that the technology still leaves an uncanny valley effect. Theron admitted that the decision was a little heartbreaking, for sure, but understood Miller's rationale. In March 2020, during the COVID-19 lockdown in Australia, Miller auditioned several actresses over Skype for the Furiosa role. In October 2020, Anya Taylor-Joy, Chris Hemsworth, and Yahya Abdul-Mateen too were cast, although Abdul-Mateen later dropped out due to a scheduling conflict. Miller chose Taylor-Joy after seeing her performance in an early cut of the film Last Night in Soho, 2021, and auditioning her with the Mad as Hell monologue, quoted by the character Howard Bale, portrayed by Peter Finch, from Sidney Lumet's Network, 1976. Edgar Wright, the director of Last Night in Soho, told Miller to do yourself a favor and grab the opportunity to work with her. Miller felt that there's a kind of timelessness to her, there's a mystery to her, and yet she's accessible. Taylor-Joy received advice from Nicholas Hoult, who had previously portrayed Nux in Fury Road and worked alongside her in The Menu, 2022. According to Goran D. Clewood, who portrayed the Octoboss, Miller asks every actor who auditions with him to try out the Mad as Hell monologue. Hemsworth, an Australian, had grown up watching the Mad Max films. In 2010, he had previously applied for the title role in Fury Road that eventually went to Tom Hardy. Hemsworth later explained that he was not a big enough star at the time to earn the role. His most notable role, Thor, had not yet debuted in the 2011 film of the same name. To accurately portray resource scarcity in the wasteland, Hemsworth cut his calorie intake in half compared to when he prepares for a Marvel Cinematic Universe, MCU, film. Describing and elaborating on his character's motivations, Hemsworth said, "He's a pretty horrible individual. Through the whole film we kept coming back to, this is evil, but what is the intention behind it? It's not just sadistic insanity. There is a real purpose, the wheels are turning, he's plotting and planning and 10 steps ahead of everyone else." Amid the character's harshness, Hemsworth imagines Dementis as something of a father figure to Furiosa, adding, "I think that's how he sees himself. I think there's a paternal quality and nature to the relationship in his eyes." Furiosa would, I'm sure, argue to her death the complete opposite. In 2021, Miller cast Alyla Browne as a young Furiosa. She had previously worked with Miller on 3,000 Years of Longing. Miller said that she reminded him of a young Furiosa and that she impressed him while doing the splits on set. Tom Burke joined the cast in the autumn of 2021 as Praetorian Jack, replacing Abdul-Mateen. Burke said that while most of his scenes were shot sitting down in a truck, he had to spend long hours in the gym becoming as lithe as possible, given that he might have to safely jump off the war rig many times in a row until Miller got a take he was satisfied with. When principal photography commenced in June 2022, the producers disclosed that Nathan Jones and Angus Sampson were set to reprise their roles from Fury Road. They additionally announced that Quaden Bales, who worked on 3,000 Years of Longing after a video about his mistreatment at school went viral, would appear in a minor role. During the production, Miller agreed to cast Lachy Hulme, who was already playing the role of Rizdal Pell, as a younger Immortan Joe, succeeding Fury Road's late Hugh Keays-Byrne, who died in 2020. Miller initially wanted to use a body double for Joe and record his lines in post-production with ADR, but Hulme convinced Miller that he could replicate Keays-Byrne's voice and eyes. When you are working on a Dr. George Miller movie, there's no pressure on you because you're in an incredibly supportive environment, Hulme said. During pre-production, Hulme fell off a motorcycle while practicing for a scene as Rizdal Pell. Afterwards, Miller decided all the actors' bike riding would be performed by his stunt double, Chris Matheson. Filming took place in Australia from May to October 2022. Principal photography began on June 1, 2022. Miller shot the film at various locations in New South Wales, Broken Hill/Silverton, Hay, the stowaway action sequence, Kurnell, the bullet farm and the final confrontation between Furiosa and Dementis, Taree Hills, the Green Place, Melrose Park, Gastown, and the Disney lot in Sydney, the Citadel. The action sequence where the raiders ambush the war rig took 78 days to shoot, where close to 200 stunt performers worked on it every day. The sequence became known during production as Stowaway to Nowhere. Miller stated that Furiosa was an easier shoot than Fury Road, alluding to the latter's troubled production, and complimented Warner Brothers' new leadership for implementing an approach to filmmaking that was much more collaborative than it was adversarial. Burke said that Miller wanted a different kind of filming style from Fury Road, which used short takes and long cuts. He noted that Miller specifically wanted to shoot the scene where Dementis taunts Jack and Furiosa in one take. In lighting most of Furiosa's exterior shots, Duggan and gaffer Sean Conway recognized that nearly all of our story would be told during daytime, so everything relied on sunlight, Duggan said. And because we were in mid-El Nino, the weather during the shoot was unpredictable, with pouring rains and winds up to 50 miles per hour. So, we added a lot of artificial light to create sunlight, which helped us create a harsh look that was quite different than what you'd expect. 2. Augment their location's natural light, the filmmakers relied on a uniform approach, employing an array of 6 18K HMI pars at varying degrees of spot. The 6 pars were mounted to 3 heavy-duty telescopic handlers that were easily movable and could withstand the conditions, and the lamps were protected from the rain, Duggan noted. We found that the 18K array could cover almost half a football field and accommodated the size of most of our exterior location sets. We could put the light wherever we wanted to. Whenever the sun was coming in and out, we'd follow and match that direction. He continued. George told us we weren't going to wait for anything to light our sets, so we had to be prepared with one solution. And that meant we didn't have to stop shooting, we could just keep on going. Of course, we always oriented the sets, or our camera, to make use of side light or backlight from the actual sun, but the brute power of those pars gave us all the light we needed. Taylor-Joy praised Miller's commitment to safety on set, but said that working on the film was, nonetheless, a challenging experience. With just 30-odd spoken lines of dialogue, she would go months on the film set without speaking a single word on camera. I've never been more alone than making that movie. I don't want to go too deep into it, but everything that I thought was going to be easy was hard. When asked what proved more difficult than she expected on the Furiosa set, the actress said, "Next question, sorry. Talk to me in 20 years. In a later interview, responding to a question regarding how she was able to portray the nuance and complexity of Furiosa without much dialogue, Taylor-Joy explained, "The character was just immediately there. The second that I read the first script, even though the script changed quite a bit by the time we got to filming, I had her essence very deeply embedded within me. I was also supremely protective. I think I fought more for this character than I had fought for any other character. George had such a specific vision for what he wanted her to be, and I just felt like it was my responsibility to fight for any moment where you could see a little bit of her rage come out. 86 Sharing. Her most memorable note given by Miller throughout the filming process, she said, "George wanted Furiosa to be incredibly stoic. And I felt like my contribution was that I've always felt like you need to see the humanity behind that, if you want people to fully invest in a character. George encourages you to be in almost like a university type setting where every choice you have to justify, and you don't justify it once. You justify it thousands of times if it's going to make it in the movie. It was really great training for me, not only as an actor but also as somebody that hopes to direct one day. Your conviction has to be unwavering if you want something to make it into one of his movies." Hemsworth arrived on set nursing a back injury, but said that he was excited to work on Furiosa because playing Dementis allowed him to get out of that typecast space of the muscly action guy and play a character with complications and darkness. He explained that suffering without a purpose is awful, but suffering with purpose can be rejuvenating and replenishing. Burke said that Miller was willing to collaborate with his actors to structure Furiosa and Jack's relationship, explaining that while Miller wanted a romance, Burke felt the characters should push romance to the side until they believe they are riding off to a safer place. While promoting the film, the actors disclosed several ideas that Miller considered or even shot but ultimately cut. Taylor-Joy said that Miller shot but ultimately deleted a scene where Furiosa cuts off Dementis's tongue, an act which is mentioned but not shown in the theatrical version. Burke said that Miller vetoed the idea of a training montage where Jack teaches Furiosa about road war because it was too much of a cliché. Fury Road's VFX supervisor Andrew Jackson returned for Furiosa. His home studio DNEG worked with Framestore, MetaPHYSIC.ai, Rising Sun Pictures, and Slate Fs. He had received an Academy Award nomination for Fury Road and subsequently won the Oscar for Tenet, 2020. Jackson said that Furiosa leans much more heavily than Fury Road on visual effects and that Miller completely embraced the idea that CG is the way to go to build worlds and do whatever we need to do in post. In addition to traditional CGI work, such as augmenting backdrops and stitching together the work of multiple stuntmen who shot their scenes separately for safety reasons, Jackson used VFX to heighten certain action scenes, such as the stowaway action sequence, where VFX animated the Octobos's demise, and the final chase sequence, where a CGI version of Furiosa's, otherwise practical, car was used to animate things just far too dangerous to be doing with a real car, like sideswiping motorbikes. VFX helped generate a feeling of movement by making background elements move faster and animating flying equipment like the Octobos's rippling black parachute. As Furiosa ages from a child to a young woman over the course of the film, Miller and Jackson hired Rising Sun Pictures to use machine learning to blend Taylor-Joy's and Browne's faces together. Taylor-Joy said that Miller wanted the transition to be seamless. She spent 2 days shooting with Rising Sun so that they could map her facial expressions. By her estimate, at the start of the film, about 35% of Browne's face was modified to look like her own, a figure that increased to 80% during Browne's final scenes in the Citadel. Additionally, in Taylor-Joy's early scenes in the Citadel, her eyes were partially modified to look more like Browne's. Taylor-Joy stressed that the actors' union went on strike in part to demand better regulation of AI tools and that Miller's use of AI was consensual. MetaPHYSIC.ai performed a similar function for the Bullet Farmer, blending Lee Perry's facial features with those of the late Richard Carter, who portrayed the Bullet Farmer in Fury Road. According to the Australian Broadcasting Corporation, ABC, Furiosa was the most expensive film in Australian history, with a budget of $333.2 million. Over 3,000 people worked on the film, including some ex-convicts who were hired as supporting artists. In addition, to take advantage of Australian tax credits for VFX work, DNEG opened a Sydney branch to spearhead special effects work on Furiosa. It estimated that the office, once fully staffed, would employ up to 500 VFX artists. The film was awarded extensive government subsidies, including a filming incentive from the New South Wales government and various offsets from the federal government. Miller said that government support made shooting in Australia possible. Queensland University of Technology professor Amanda Lotz estimated that Screen NSW contributed $50 million in direct subsidies to Furiosa's budget. Additionally, the federal government offers all qualifying films a tax rebate equivalent to 40% of the amount of money the production spends in Australia. Lotz estimated this federal rebate at $133 million, 40% of $333.2 million, and NSW Premier Gladys Berejiklian said that she hoped Furiosa would contribute $350 million to the Australian economy. Although a May 2024 ABC report estimated the size of the NSW filming incentive as $175 million, over half the film's reported budget, the ABC subsequently amended its report to remove that estimate. Other reports suggested that the $175 million figure applies to the total size of the NSW subsidy fund, spread out over 5 years, and not to Furiosa specifically. Furiosa's VFX artists allowed production to keep shooting in Australia even though the weather in New South Wales was not ideal for a desert-based film. By contrast, Miller had to move the Fury Road shoot from Australia to Namibia because rain caused wildflowers to grow in the Australian desert, which would not have happened in a post-apocalyptic wasteland. According to Framestore, during the opening chase sequence where Mary tracks Furiosa's kidnappers through a series of sand dunes, we ended up pretty much having to replace all of the ground. Colorist Eric Whip, who also worked on Fury Road, said that because the desert scenes needed to look like Namibia and there was a huge mix of sunny and cloudy days during the shoot, a lot of the backgrounds in this film are full CG. Fury Road composer Tom Holkenborg, also known as Junkie XL, returned to score Furiosa, as his third collaboration with Miller after Fury Road and 3,000 Years of Longing. Holkenborg moved to Sydney to pen the score and also helped prepare the final mix. He explained that because Furiosa was a character-driven film, the film's score had to be character-driven as well. Musically, everything was being told from a first-person perspective, which is being her Furiosa, how she watches the world around her, the wasteland, its cruelties. Holkenborg added that Miller wanted a way more subtle score for Furiosa than Fury Road, the latter of which was just massive action over 48 hours and an over-the-top rock opera. In particular, Miller vetoed reusing the song Brothers in Arms from Fury Road, which plays when Max and Furiosa help each other escape the Rock Rider Canyon, during the Bullet Farm action sequence because he wanted to focus the audience's attention on the fact that Furiosa was willing to sacrifice her best chance at finding the green place to save Jack's life, and directed Holkenborg to use Fury Road's musical motifs for the green place instead. Miller explained that the Bullet Farm sequence needed to be kind of a love story in the middle of an action scene. He wanted to show that through their actions, Furiosa and Jack actually are prepared to give of themselves entirely to the other. Furthermore, Holkenborg used AI to make deepfake voices from another voice, explaining, what if the source sound was a drum rhythm, and what if the destination sound was an electric guitar? But the software doesn't know what to make of it. So it gave us a happy accident that we used throughout the score. Warner Brothers' in-house record label Watertower Music released the official soundtrack album on May 17, 2024. On November 29, 2023, the Warner Brothers booth at CCXP featured a first-look image of Taylor-Joy's Furiosa. The following day, the teaser trailer of the film was released. On March 19, 2024, the official trailer debuted. At Cinemacon, Warner Brothers screened extended footage of the film on April 9. Miller, Taylor-Joy, and Hemsworth appeared together for the first time in public to promote the film. Running about 5 minutes, the extended preview shown at Cinemacon revealed that the film would be split into 3 distinct chapters: Her Odyssey Begins, A Warrior Awakens, and A Ride into Vengeance. The final film actually features a total of 5 chapters: The Pole of Inaccessibility, Lessons from the Wasteland, The Stowaway, Homeward, and Beyond Vengeance. A trio of first-look images from the film were released exclusively by Total Film on April 19. On May 16, an extended sneak peek was released by Odeon Cinemas and was released on YouTube the following day. Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga had its world premiere at the 77th Cannes Film Festival, screening out of competition, on May 15, 2024. The film was released theatrically in Australia and India on May 23, 2024, and in the United States on 24 May 2024. It was originally scheduled to be released on June 23, 2023, but was delayed to May 2024. The film opened in China on June 7, 2024, becoming the first Mad Max film to be theatrically released there. In May 2024, on the Happy Sad Confused podcast, Miller confirmed that the film would be receiving a black and white treatment, similar to what he did for Fury Road, referred to as the Black and Chrome edition, in 2016, expressing his interest in black and white as a format for film. The film was released on VOD and digital platforms on 24 June. Following its digital release, it was reported that Furiosa led the home viewing charts. The film came in at number 1 on the iTunes VOD chart for July 1 and held the same position on the Fandango at Home chart for the week of 24 to 30 June. It was released on 4K UHD, Blu-ray, and DVD on 13 August. Special features include the hour-long behind-the-scenes documentary Highway to Valhalla, In Pursuit of Furiosa, which interweaves concept art, set footage, and interviews with cast and crew, providing an overview of the project from conception to post-production, while shorter featurettes delve into Furiosa and Dementis, and Taylor-Joy's, and Hemsworth's performances. An extended breakdown of the stowaway action sequence is also included. The disc is rounded out by a featurette on the film's vehicular designs and their construction. The same day, Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga Black and Chrome edition was released simultaneously on 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray and digital streaming, and is also featured in the Mad Max 5 Film 4K Collector's Edition, which was released on September 24. The film became available for streaming on Max on August 16. On December 30, alongside Fury Road, the film became available to stream on Netflix. Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga grossed $67.6 million in the United States and Canada, and $105.3 million in other territories, for a worldwide total of $174.40 million. The film's box office performance has been deemed a failure. Critics and film pundits noted that the franchise's limited appeal in general and prequels, in particular, contributed to poor box office performance. Variety reported that industry insiders estimated that Furiosa needed to gross $350 to $375 million to turn a profit, and that it would end up losing $75 to $95 million for the studio and its co-funders. However, a Warner Brothers spokesperson claimed that the film had a lower break-even point. As much as half of the film's budget was covered by the NSW and Australian federal governments. In April 2025, Deadline Hollywood calculated the film lost the studio $119.6 million, when factoring together all expenses and revenues. In the United States, Furiosa's $32.3 million gross in its 4-day opening weekend was described as disappointing. Industry analysts had projected $40 million. Of that $32.3 million, the film earned $10.4 million on its first Friday, including an estimated $3.5 million from Thursday night previews, the latter of which was similar to the $3.7 million made by Fury Road. Although Furiosa was the highest-grossing film during the Memorial Day weekend, beating the Garfield movie and Site 149, that weekend had the lowest total box office receipts since 1995, and Furiosa was the lowest-grossing film to finish in first over Memorial Day since Casper, $22 million before inflation adjustment, also released in 1995. Furiosa's $10.8 million second weekend, a 59% drop from the opening weekend, excluding Memorial Day itself, was also considered a disappointment, as the Garfield movie dropped only 42% and won the weekend. For comparison, Fury Road had a 46% drop in its second weekend. As a whole, ticket sales for that weekend were down 65% from 2023. Domestic receipts fell an additional 61% in the third weekend, when Furiosa was pre-scheduled to surrender its premium large format screens, which are typically booked months in advance, to the premiere weekend of Bad Boys: Ride or Die. Furiosa's domestic box office relied heavily on PLF screens. Internationally, Furiosa grossed $33.3 million in the first 3 days. Industry analysts had projected $40 to $45 million. A week prior, the film had opened at number 1 in Australia, earning AUD $3.33 million during its second weekend. Furiosa performed relatively better in international markets, grossing $21 million, which Deadline Hollywood called a good 38% drop, but coming off a low base. The film premiered in Japan on May 31, 2024, 1 week behind the United States, and became the first non-Japanese film of 2024 to debut at number 165 reported by Variety. It also held the number 1 spot in China on its first day, June 7, over the country's Dragon Boat Festival holiday weekend, but its $3.58 million take in its first 3-day weekend left it outside the top 5. However, The Hollywood Reporter reported that the film opened in 6th place with $3.7 million as a batch of local releases dominated ticket sales. Chinese ticketing app Maoyan forecasted Furiosa to finish its run with about $7.5 million. Industry analysts identified a variety of reasons for Furiosa's opening weekend, which was considered weak in light of what film consultant David A. Gross called outstanding reviews and a good audience score. The opening weekend was not entirely unexpected. In April 2024, Deadline Hollywood reported that some sources were expecting Furiosa to compete neck and neck with the Garfield movie. 168. However, following Furiosa's disappointing second weekend, an anonymous studio executive told a reporter that it's mind-numbing that Furiosa hasn't grossed $50 million domestically. Gross. And The Hollywood Reporter's Pamela McClintock wrote that Furiosa was hurt by the industry-wide disruption to the film production schedule caused by the 2023 Hollywood labor disputes, a position that, according to the New York Times, the film studios had been pushing for several months. According to Gross, moviegoing thrives on momentum and rhythm, one strong movie after another bringing fans to the multiplex once or more per month. Right now, the schedule is thin. Despite being a female-fronted action film, Furiosa's opening weekend viewership skewed heavily male, 72%, and young, 55% of viewers were between ages 18 to 34. The Rap's Jeremy Fooster speculated that one of the reasons for the awful underperformance was because the film is not a 4-quadrant tentpole, writing, Furiosa wasn't ever expected to be a Fast and Furious or Disney remake-level money-maker for theaters, skewing more towards male audiences and to longtime Mad Max fans. Forbes Paul Tassi praised Hemsworth and Taylor-Joy's performances, but questioned whether Furiosa commanded the same kind of brand recognition as a traditional IP-led tentpole feature, given that it was a prequel spin-off of a side character in Fury Road who is not even being played by the same actress this time. After Bad Boys: Ride or Die debuted above expectations, box office analyst Scott Mendelson tweeted that sequels soar, prequels stumble, and originals struggle, just like nearly every other summer. Furiosa's domestic grosses disproportionately came from premium large format screenings, PLFs, like IMAX and Dolby Cinema, which command higher ticket prices than screenings in regular theaters, and, according to Warner Bros. Executives, may appeal more to die-hard fans. In its opening weekend, 54% of Furiosa's domestic gross came from PLFs, compared to 48% for Oppenheimer, 44% for Dune, Part 2, 42% for Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1, and 37% for Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. Conversely, Screen Rant's Kate Buff suggested that Hollywood studios' eagerness to push content onto their own streaming services had encouraged everyday filmgoers to put off watching Furiosa in theaters on the assumption that Warner Brothers would quickly transition Furiosa to Max. She added that high budgets for tentpole features were raising the bar for box office success. Several critics and filmmakers urged audiences to watch the film without being put off by its weak box office results. Vulture's Bilge Eberi, who praised Miller for taking a big franchise sequel and turning it into something strange, sublime, and potentially off-putting, urged analysts to focus on long-term performance and to give Furiosa time to grab a foothold in the marketplace, rather than write off the film based on its opening weekend. Eberi also pointed to the 2023 cultural phenomenon of Barbenheimer, Barbie and Oppenheimer, which accumulated 75% of its total grosses after the opening weekend due to strong word of mouth. Director Wes Ball, whose film Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes had moved up its release date to avoid directly competing with Furiosa, encouraged people to go and watch the film on the big screen on Twitter by tweeting, "Like the movie or not, creative swings like this don't come around often. When they do, try to enjoy the ambition of it all in a great theater." Furiosa was made because Fury Road was beloved, not because it was a box office hit. On the review aggregator website Rotten Tomatoes, 90% of 419 critics' reviews are positive, with an average rating of 7.9/10. The website's consensus reads, "Retroactively enriching Fury Road with greater emotional heft if not quite matching it in propulsive throttle, Furiosa is another glorious swerve in mastermind George Miller's breathless race towards cinematic Valhalla." Metacritic, which uses a weighted average, assigned the film a score of 79 out of 100, based on 64 critics, indicating generally favorable reviews. Audiences polled by CinemaScore gave the film an average grade of B+ on an A+ to F scale, the same as Fury Road, while those polled by PostTrack gave the film an average of 4.5 stars out of 5, with 70% saying they would definitely recommend it. Writing for RogerEbert.com, Robert Daniels awarded the film 4 out of 4 stars, and called it one of the best prequels ever made. He praised the action sequences, performances, and storyline. Pete Hammond of Deadline Hollywood viewed the film as possessing the best screenplay of any Mad Max film. The Guardian's Peter Bradshaw called Taylor-Joy an overwhelmingly convincing action heroine. Writing for Empire, John Nugent awarded the film 5 out of 5 stars, and described Taylor-Joy as phenomenal, finding the right balance of steeliness and fractured humanity that Theron instilled. Jada Yuen from the Washington Post thought that Hemsworth had created one of the all-time great screen villains, and Jake Wilson of the Sydney Morning Herald saw him stealing the show. In a critical review, Owen Gleiberman of Variety perceived Furiosa as franchise overkill and as filled with pretension. Nicholas Barber of the BBC also disliked some aspects of the film, giving it 3 out of 5 stars. He viewed the plot as meandering and as draining, writing, "You soon reach the point where you're sick of sand, sick of explosions, sick of off-puttingly sadistic violence." Stephanie Zacharik's review in Time similarly criticized the film as a slog that's working hard to persuade us we're having a good time. John MacDonald of the Australian Financial Review opined that part of the film's failure may be attributed to the writing, but also to Hemsworth's woodenness as an actor. In July 2024, Theron confirmed she had seen the film, stating, "It's amazing, it's a beautiful film." When asked if she had talked to Taylor-Joy at all throughout the process or since its release, Theron said, "No, we've really been trying to connect. It's been one of those, we can actually make a comedy out of it. We keep running into each other and in places when we don't have time to really talk to each other, so we're constantly like, oh my god, okay, let's get together. And then life takes over. But it will happen when it's right." By year's end, RogerEbert.com critic Matt Zoller cites, along with Cortland Kelly, named Furiosa as the best of the top 10 films of 2024. Having called it a triumph from George Miller despite its imperfections and a film in the tradition of other late-career masterpieces by great directors, clearly less interested in recycling the same established templates yet again, and revisiting familiar themes and situations that were once presented more straightforwardly with a more ambivalent or complicated attitude. Lucas Kluberdansdijk, writer for Collider, ranked it as the best action film of the year, writing, "Furiosa produces another classic tale of vengeance. This movie is a worthy entry in the Mad Max franchise and continues to revolutionize action movies with impressive practical stunts. The oil tanker scene alone is one of the best sequences in an action movie, but the non-stop narrative has exhilarating and heart-pumping moments that establish Furiosa as one of the greatest action movies ever, let alone the best of 2024. Many filmmakers, including Maggie Betts, Davy Joe, Robert Eggers, Jeff Fowler, Drew Goddard, Luca Guadagnino, Don Hertzfeldt, David Lowery, Pascal Plante, Celine Song, Nacho Vigalondo, and Adam Wingard cited the film as among their favorites of 2024. It's home to rock, dust, ash, bone. The people who live there, hard survivors of cataclysm, wear the tatters of their own humanity around their shoulders. What little hope they stored away was long ago taken from them, ripped open like a carcass and picked at by buzzards. Perhaps once, the land was green. Perhaps you could listen to water run unhindered, pick red fruit right from the tree. But no more. No more. Such places are history. Myth. Delusion. Furiosa lived in such a place of green trees and cool streams, an Eden where hope still grows ripe and full. And people would do most anything to find it? Well, a handful of raiders did find it, and they found Furiosa, too. They tied her up and threw her across a bike, hoping to use her as living proof of the hidden paradise. Furiosa's mother tore after the kidnappers and snatched her beloved daughter away out of the enemy camp. Soon, on the back of a pilfered motorcycle, they were roaring back home. The raiders, led by the warlord Dementor, tore after them, determined to reclaim their prize and, if possible, descend on Furiosa's green garden like gas-reeking locusts. Soon Furiosa's mother was dead and the girl herself was back in their hands. But before she died, Furiosa's mom placed a fruit seed in Furiosa's hands. "Plant this seed," she told the girl. "Protect the green place. She's been with Dementus for years now, watching him preen and plunder and kill. She's never spoken a word since her mother died." At first, he kept Furiosa in a cage. But Dementor has taken a shine to the girl, adopting her as his own and calling her, "my little D." Furiosa bides her time. Waiting. Looking for an opportunity to find her way back to the green place. Dementus' upcoming meeting with another, rival warlord. The mysterious ruler of the Citadel, Immortan Joe. The wasteland is not filled with a lot of great role models. Virtue is pretty relative, and showing too much kindness is a good way to get you killed. Actually, Furiosa's mother is living/dying proof of that, granting clemency to a fellow mother as she takes Furiosa out of Dementus's camp. The other mom promptly rats the two out. Naturally, Furiosa's mom shows a mother's instincts, risking her life repeatedly for her little girl. Other folks living in that green place seem to have retained a little more humanity than their wasteland fellows, too. But even in the wasteland, not everyone's a jerk. As an adult, Furiosa falls in with a driver named Praetorian Jack. He mentors and befriends her, promising to give Furiosa the skills she needs to survive and, ultimately, to take off on her own. Furiosa grows to trust Jack, and the man proves to be worthy of it, never asking her too many questions, but always supporting her as much as he can. As for Furiosa, well, she's suffered plenty in her short lifetime. The things she's seen, and the things she's done, leave an indelible mark. But as scarred as she might be, Furiosa shows unwavering loyalty to those who prove worthy of it. She rushes in to fight for those she loves, even when the odds seem hopeless, and the more prudent path would be away from the fight. The various tribes that populate the wasteland have, at times, embraced a near shamanistic attitude toward the natural and man-made elements around them. When the movie introduces us to Dementus, he's in his tent, draped in a shawl almost as an old-school Sadducee might be. His attention, as is that of the tent's other occupants, is turned toward a motorcycle. The history man, an ancient-looking fellow whose skin is covered in tattooed words, recites the specifications of said motorcycle, almost as if it was some sort of mantra. In another scene, several men seem to bow reverently to a pile of discarded steering wheels. Immortan Joe isn't quite the quasi-divine figure he becomes in Mad Max, Fury Road, but he still inspires rabid devotion from his followers, blithely sending a man, called a war boy, to his death, just to prove his loyalty. Those war boys, incidentally, spray their mouths in chrome paint when they go all kamikaze, which is often, again, a nod to their holy or near holy regard in which they hold their machines. We also hear a reference to holy motors. The residents of Furiosa's green place turn away from man-made objects and instead cast what devotion they have upward. "The stars be with you," they sometimes tell each other for good luck. A narrator recites some notable wars in Earth's past, broadly mentioning the countless wars of religion and righteous belief. Someone calls Furiosa the darkest of angels, the fifth rider of the apocalypse. We hear the phrase, "hell," and "hallelujah." As was the case in Mad Max, Fury Road, Immortan Joe has, essentially, a harem. It's populated by women draped in white, garments that sometimes expose thigh and midriff, and who are there, simply, to have sex with the warlord. He's hoping to father another heir. When Dementus and Immortan Joe meet as part of some wasteland negotiations, Dementus brings along the child Furiosa, introducing her as being untouched by man or disease. Immortan Joe wants the girl to join that harem, believing that she'll be a fine breeder when she grows up. Dementus initially tells Immortan Joe that his daughter is not for sale, but, thanks in part to Furiosa's own machinations, she falls under the sway of the Citadel anyway. And while Immortan Joe seems only to be holding Furiosa for future use, his son, Rictus Erectus, seems to be interested in the child right now. He plays with her hair in one scene and forces her into a private meeting in another. Furiosa escapes both encounters. Residents of the Green Place show deep love for one another not by kissing, but by pressing their foreheads together. Furiosa and her mother engage in this gesture. Furiosa and Praetorian Jack do, as well. And Furiosa's mother performs the gesture with another woman. This could be just a sign of deep friendship, but it could also be interpreted as a nod to a same-sex romance. The headquarters of a wasteland boss features a painting filled with bare-breasted women. He's reproducing what would appear to be a romantic-era painting, of which he has a small print of. A motorcycle is adorned with the head and torso of an anatomically accurate female mannequin. Men go without shirts. Dementor often wears an elaborate codpiece. At one juncture, he also chains a teddy bear around his loin area, which someone removes. Immortan Joe's other son is named Scrotus. A man is chained to several motorcycles, which then pull the guy apart. Another has his neck severely cut in a crash. The man bleeds his life away as dogs lap up the blood and lick his wounds. Someone is executed by being tethered to the back of a bike via a chain. He's forced to run until he can run no more, after which he's dragged in a circle for hours. He's quite dead by then. We see someone serve as living fertilizer for a tree planted, apparently, right on the guy's groin. A character is essentially crucified. Wasteland inhabitants surround a man who crashed in the desert. If the fallen man isn't dead already, it's clear he soon will be. Another character gets gobbled up by the desert itself, being sucked into a pit. We do learn how Furiosa lost her arm and we see the appendage dangle from a chain, gore dripping from the lost limb. After losing it, she ultimately finds herself in a nightmarish cavern. Her wound is covered in maggots who are also having a field day with the other arms, legs and dead bodies crammed into the space. Live residents encourage Furiosa to stay, telling the woman that she can find peace there. A man is skewered in the head with a massive dart. A warboy sports a small arrow in his shaved head, and he appears not to mind. A dog trots around with a disembodied foot in its mouth. A tire shreds somebody's arm. A descending portcullis smashes a car, and presumably those inside. Claws and chains snatch up motorcycles and their riders, sending many of the latter falling to their doom. A horse is butchered, and its head is strapped to a motorcycle. Someone purposely leaps to his death, taking an explosive with him and blowing up several not-so-innocent watchers. Someone suffers a nasty-looking wound on the back. A male character's nipples are ripped off. Another character has a chain connected to his chest area. Dozens of people are killed via guns. We often see the moment of impact and slash or the resulting head wounds. Many others die in fiery explosions. Still others get crushed by cars, trucks, and war machines. Paragliders and ultralight flyers are harpooned and dragged into the ground or into spinning bits of machinery. Spines are somehow used as whips. A prominent character walks around with a vacant eye socket. So many vehicles crash. So many people die in said vehicles. The word tard is used twice, and we hear the British profanity bollocks once, along with the anatomical word testes. The word PSS is used several times, always referring to the actual substance. We hear a crude term for breasts as well. God's name is abused once. A fighter holds a jar of his own urine, which he apparently uses to cool down a war machine's radiators. He even apparently has the title of PSS boy. Furiosa shakes a bottle of her own urine in someone's face. An organic mechanic whips up delicacies made from human blood and, possibly, flesh. You can never balance the scales of suffering, Dementor tells Furiosa. No matter, she's sure going to try. Listen, all Mad Max movies are plenty bleak. In each installment, creator and director George Miller reliably spoons us a broth of dust and blood, and he shows us a world gone well, mad. That's really the point. Some humans may have survived the apocalypse, but humanity is mostly dead. In most Mad Max films, as bloody and carnage-driven as they are, we see signs of virtue and hope and love. Mad Max, Fury Road, for all its excesses, came with some interesting spiritual wrinkles and a quest for redemption. Does that necessarily redeem all the blood and gore that splashes on the way? Maybe not. But at least we feel like the movie had a purpose beyond the okay. It, like Furiosa's drive toward home in Fury Road, was taking us to a better place. But in the prequel Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga, we're literally and figuratively driving away from that comparative paradise and into the wasteland. And the waste we encounter can feel pretty oppressive. Listen, for Mad Max fans, all the ingredients are here. The action sequences are still great, if not spectacular. The world of Mad Max has never felt so convincingly grimy. Chris Hemsworth, playing Dementus, swaggers around something like a post-apocalyptic Jack Sparrow, managing to be both a bit ludicrous and reliably evil. But without a redemptive carrot to chase in this movie, the story can feel sluggish, and the violence sinks into inescapable sadism. And when Dementus tells Furiosa that the two of them are cut from the same cloth, you buy it? She is as her world made her, cruel. The question is, do you have what it takes to make it epic, says an undaunted Chris Hemsworth. It's a call to action that comes toward the end of Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga, George Miller's apocalyptic epic western prequel to Mad Max, Fury Road that could, of course, be directed at Miller himself. Because this film is here to give you more gravity-defying chases, more high-flying stunts, more deeply felt pathos, and, somehow, an even greater spirit to push the limits of what the frame can hold, employing Christian iconography and Arthurian legend to craft an entrancing story that still manages to surprise, even if we already know of the bleak future it's guiding us toward. It's simply one of the best prequels ever made. Broken into 5 chapters, each denser than the last, the film begins with a very young Furiosa, Alyla Browne, picking fruit from a tree near her bucolic homeland, the Green Place. A biker gang arrives to forage the land. And though Furiosa ably attempts to sabotage their bikes, she is captured, causing her mother, Charlie Fraser, to venture out into the desert wasteland to retrieve her. A crazed chase ensues, one of the film's many expansive set pieces, that sees Furiosa's mother pursuing her daughter's kidnappers over sand dunes and through a sandstorm, to the steps of a hideout belonging to the messianic figure Dementis, Chris Hemsworth. This is the beginning of a decade-long feud between Furiosa and Dementis that involves revenge, grief, and the desire to return home. To do any further summarizing would, of course, not only spoil the film, but would also say that the narrative beats are necessary. They're not. That doesn't mean Furiosa is illogical, rather that, more than anything, Miller is telling an emotional story of how a once virtuous child became a hardened woman. That kind of arc matches well with the film's operatic sensibilities as we're introduced to the origins of wasteland fortresses like Gastown and Bullet Farm, and taken to the citadel helmed by a younger, more imposing Immortan Joe, Lachy Hulme. Other characters like Immortan Joe's bumbling sons Rictus, Nathan Jones, and Scrotus, Josh Hellman, return, and tips of the hat are given to fan favorites from Fury Road. Surprisingly, the older Furiosa, a striking Anya Taylor-Joy, doesn't appear until an hour or so in the film. That might inspire immediate disappointment in some, but it shouldn't, because Alyla Browne as the adolescent Furiosa is so absorbing, often recalling a young Jodie Foster in her mixture of otherworldly intelligence and relentless confidence. The groundwork she lays is so seamless that by the time we leap forward to Taylor-Joy's take on the character, it required a few beats before I could tell the difference between the two actresses. Miller is so assured at reading an audience, he even crafts an elongated chase that sees Furiosa driving across the wasteland with Praetorian Jack, Tom Burke, on an oil run that gives Taylor-Joy and the character the perfect entrance, a hard push-in for a worthy close-up. Though Burke is on screen for a relatively short time, he and Taylor-Joy build quick chemistry as two lost souls who believe that paradise still exists somewhere in the world if they follow the map of stars tattooed on Furiosa's forearm. If it feels like Hemsworth is an also-ran, he isn't. Which is odd to say because he is saddled with a terrible wig and an obtrusive prosthetic nose, and even disappears for long stretches. Still, whenever he does show up, he might be the best part of Furiosa. He doesn't just get the best, more instantly quotable lines. He has never been more physically commanding, first as a poised messiah and swindler, then as a blowhard politician, then as an emperor with no clothes on. The combination of Dementis wit, callousness, and cold calculations is a persona Hemsworth has worked on for some time, and it all comes together here for an unforgettable villain turn. I can certainly nitpick about what elements I prefer in Fury Road as opposed to Furiosa. There's far more VFX in the latter, causing me to miss some of the thrills Miller inspired with his unflinching use of practical effect. I also think that Fury Road acts on a subtler thematic level, which is saying something, because the visual language in that film, for as immaculate as the craftsmanship is, basically bashes you over the head. Furiosa goes one step further. Every line of dialogue flags the metaphorical importance of every scene. And yet, it's easy to ignore these tiny grievances, not only because you're left marveling at the big swing Miller is taking, but also because his interest in this world, these characters, and this type of big, bold storytelling is so infectious. There's also a character named Pissboy, so this really is a movie with something for everyone. No one knows how to do scale better than Miller. Margaret Sixel and Elliot Knappman's editing is breathtakingly seamless, quickly building both rapport between characters and gnarly deaths with equal tenacity, to the point that DP Simon Duggan's eloquent photography of these desolate death valleys, matched by composer Tom Holkenborg's deafeningly propulsive score, wholly immerses you in a way that isn't needlessly showing. Each large set piece feels necessary, aware of space and story, and brimming with a camera that takes delight in knowing exactly what kill shot or angle of the many battles we want to take in as it swoops between lunging bodies, massive infernos, monster trucks, big rigs, and over sand dunes. Much will be written about Furiosa on a thematic level, such as how it subverts the biblical apple scene for a well-earned ending, or how it speaks of our present environmental, militaristic, and regressive political reality, particularly why we go to war and the fecklessness of the leaders who take us there. But this is also just a big, entertaining popcorn movie, told with a sense of adventure and play. Miller isn't here for tawdry melodrama, algorithmic plotting, or art designed for the small screen. Furiosa aims to blow you away. And it does. To Valhalla and beyond. Normally I would be a little hesitant about a prequel to something as singularly epic as Mad Max, Fury Road. Especially a prequel that doesn't even include Mad Max. But they had me the moment it was announced that Mad Max creator and mastermind George Miller was returning as co-producer and director. And getting more backstory of a character as dynamic as Imperator Furiosa made it even more enticing. In reality, Miller had a prequel centered around Furiosa in mind as far back as 2010. Following the success of 2015's spectacular Fury Road, he received the green light to make his movie. And it's a good one. Perhaps not as mind-blowing as its predecessor, but nearly everything fans of the franchise will be looking for. At the same time, some may be surprised by certain choices Miller makes. Some of them work really well, others I'm still not sure about. Interestingly, Furiosa features a lot more world building than you might expect. Miller and his returning co-writer, Nico Lathouris, put a lot of effort into adding texture to their wasteland. They spend a healthy amount of time setting up key players and developing the tensions between them, which our heroine must eventually navigate. As a result, Furiosa isn't as propulsive as Fury Road, and the action doesn't really drive the movie as it has in past Mad Max films. Yet there is a depth of storytelling that may catch you by surprise. Of course we do get the exhilarating vehicular mayhem and visceral road combat that the franchise is best known for. But with the exception of one extraordinary sprawling sequence midway through, much of the action is somewhat smaller in scale and takes on slightly different forms. This is seen clearest in the ending, which is anything but the sweeping fuel-injected set piece we're accustomed to. It's a finish that I'm still wrestling with. Furiosa's post-apocalyptic odyssey plays out over the course of 5 chapters. It begins with a young and fiery Furiosa, played by Alyla Browne, living happily with her mother, Charlie Fraser, in the Green Place, a lush and fruitful Eden-like homeland surrounded by harsh and barren desert. Her life is forever changed after she is abducted by raiders from the biker horde and taken to their leader, a ruthless power-hungry warlord named Dementus, and endlessly charismatic Chris Hemsworth. After her mother's rescue attempt ends badly, Furiosa is enslaved by Dementus and paraded around in a cage as his prized possession. With Furiosa refusing to give up the location of her homeland, Dementus sets his sights on another resource-rich target, an outpost called the Citadel, which is ran by the oppressive cult leader Immortan Joe, Lachy Hulme. After Dementus fails to stir up an insurrection among Joe's fanatical ranks, he infiltrates and takes over a vital fuel depot called Gastown. He then uses his control over the gas flow to force a meeting with Joe. The two enemies strike a deal which includes Joe getting Furiosa and grooming her to be one of his future wives. After several years, Furiosa, now played by a quiet yet fierce Anya Taylor-Joy, has shaved her head and poses as a boy working in Joe's garage. That leads to her meeting Praetorian Jack, Tom Burke, the highly skilled driver of Joe's gas-hauling war rig, who takes her under his wing and teaches her the art of road warfare. But they soon find themselves caught in the middle of a full-fledged war between the feral armies of Dementus and Joe. Miller fills his world with a wild assortment of characters sporting such gonzo names as the People Eater, Rictus Erectus, Toe Jam, and Organic Mechanic. Many are new, while some will immediately be recognized by the Fury Road faithful. What matters most is that they all fit in Miller's world as seamlessly as sand, rust, and blood. A host of superb supporting performances help bring the chaos to life. But it's Taylor-Joy and Hemsworth who shine brightest. Taylor-Joy isn't given much dialogue, and she doesn't need it to convey the pent-up rage and determination that drives her character. Then there's Hemsworth, who fuses comical with sinister in one of my favorite performances from the 40-year-old Australian. Furiosa is a stylish, immersive, and unabashedly cinematic experience that represents the manic vision of George Miller in all its delightfully demented glory. Mad Max diehards will relish the pitiless sun-baked hellscapes, the insane vehicular concoctions, the grimy and brutish societies, and the anything-goes wasteland violence. And they'll be surprised by the hefty attention to character development and world building. Furiosa has a little bit of everything. One minute you'll be chuckling at Hemsworth snapping the reins of his motorcycle chariot, and the next you'll be wincing at man burning alive or a severed arm dangling on a chain. What can I say? Welcome to the wasteland. Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga, is in theaters now. From the demented yet chaotically brilliant mind of George Miller, can we all take a second to comprehend that this is also the same director behind sweet film franchise Happy Feet, comes the 9-year-in-the-making prequel that Mad Max cult fans have been madly anticipating for the summer of 2024. And while I'm definitely not the one for dystopian post-apocalyptic violence films, I finally sat down and watched the originals and the latest Fury Road film to get a better picture of why we needed a prequel sequel. A franchise ahead of its time, I'll admit that the sandbox of toxic action-packed violence has its moments. But it wasn't until I sat down for Charlize Theron's performance that I understood. Furiosa's revenge story isn't finished. She deserves another film. But does this Mad Max prequel handle like Mad Max, Fury Road? Or are fans revving up their engines for a huge Valhalla letdown? In this Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga movie review safe for kids, I'm breaking down the visuals, the story, a full R-age rating explanation for violence, adult themes, and language, and what kids' age recommendation is suggested to watch in this new 2024 Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga movie parent's guide to the new Mad Max 2024 summer flick. A no-spoiler parent review of Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga 2024, can Anya Taylor-Joy performance rival that of Charlize Theron's Imperator Furiosa? Visually, Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga definitely fits within the Wasteland universe. Leaning into the desert scenes, the landscapes are beautiful, the costuming is on point, and the details are believably dark and twisted. The camera movements and special effects are heavily focused on the sci-fi and CGI thematic elements to enhance the action sequences and car chase scenes. Photosensitivity warning. For viewers prone to epilepsy and photosensitivity, Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga has no scenes of bright flashing or strobing lights of note. There are no scenes with dizzying and fast-spinning camera movements that could be nausea-inducing, but there are multiple scenes with fast car chases. Directed and written by Mad Max creator George Miller, Happy Feet, Warner Brothers. Pictures. Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga 2024 movie is officially the fifth installment into the Mad Max universe and the prequel to 2015 Mad Max, Fury Road, starring Anya Taylor-Joy, The Queen's Gambit, as Imperator Furiosa, Chris Hemsworth, Thor, Love and Thunder, as Dementus, Tom Burke, BBC's The Musketeers, as Praetorian Jack, and Alyla Browne, Sting, as young Furiosa. The story follows young Imperator Furiosa, who is snatched from the green place of many mothers and falls into the hands of a great biker horde led by the warlord Dementus. Sweeping through the wasteland, they come across the citadel presided over by the immortal Joe. While the two tyrants war for dominance, Furiosa finds herself in a non-stop battle to get home. Mad Max, Fury Road fans will appreciate the insight into Furiosa's backstory. But plot filling requires a little more dialogue and less of what Mad Max movies do best, race across the wasteland with explosively violent results. But that's not to say that Miller has totally lost his mad touch. He's actually given chapters to this Mad Max prequel sequel, each with its own title and direction. And he's expanded the universe to explain and give the audience more insight into building of this world. But war over territory and resources gets a little old and predictable. But the real question is Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga for kids? Another Mad Max film that is rated R? Should parents be concerned? It's no secret that I am highly skeptical of all MPAA ratings. Hello, Star Wars, The Rise of Skywalker not disclosing any language. And as we know, not all movie and TV age ratings are the same. As a parent, it's been rather heartbreaking to witness how ratings have shifted over the years, with a G rating no longer an option to help guide parents. PG ratings now oscillating between Turning Red Intense to Christopher Robin calm, and even PG-13/TV-14 age ratings teetering on the edge of R or MA ratings. Moon Knight and Werewolf by Night, ICU. There's a wide range between the age of 0 to 14 years old for parents to consider. Having fully disclosed parent guidelines can help determine if a movie or show is kid-friendly, and safe for the whole family to watch together. Why is Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga rated R? In this Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga movie review safe for kids, this 2024 Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga prequel is rated R for sequences of strong violence and grisly images. With film and TV ratings also unpredictable these days, having fully disclosed parent guidelines can help determine if a movie or television show like Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga movie is kid-friendly. Is Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga movie too violent for kids? Is Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga movie okay for kids? Let's break down that R age rating in this Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga Parents Guide. Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga is notoriously known for the intense, gory, and brutally in-your-face violence. Expect lots of fist fighting and hand-to-hand combat, child violence, blunt force trauma to the face and head, kill shots, deaths and inferred deaths, including animals and humans, kidnapping, imprisonment, hangings, bound characters, torture, intent to R at PE, does not actually occur, and use of a variety of weapons including guns, knives, explosives, spears, arrows, slingshots, and flamethrowers. Blood and gore are extensive throughout this Mad Max prequel, including gunshot wounds, including sniper shots to the head, facial cuts, scrapes, bloody noses, blood pools and spurts, open wounds and fresh stitches. Mutilated body parts, human and animal, dead bodies, human deformities and disabilities, grotesque scarring and healed wounds are also common, a step above Fury Road, with addition of decomposing body parts in various stages with the presence of active maggots/bugs. Possibly disturbing scenes of dogs and birds with human bodies that may be uncomfortable to watch. And if the violence wasn't intense enough already, let's throw in a couple of possible jump scares and suspenseful action sequences as well. There is no alcohol consumption, drugs, or smoking in Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga. Familiar characters from Fury Road are back, with the presence of medical equipment including blood transfusion tubing and various oxygen masks/tanks. One seizure is also shown on camera. As stated above, there are highlighted characters with various deformities and disabilities that may be scary/creepy to children who have not followed the Mad Max universe before. Pee is seen in bottles and being poured out with verbal references to piss. Does Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga have sexual innuendo? In short, oh yes. While there are no nudity or sex scenes, there are multiple scenes of a man fondling his own nipples which are visible to the audience and pierced, also a character from Fury Road. Another male character's nipples are seen injured and visibly bleeding during another scene. There are multiple scenes of paintings that show women with exposed breasts and nipples. There are multiple scenes of scantily clad women aka the wives. Discussion about the multiple wives also occurs. One woman is woken from sleep with intent to R at PE, but it does not occur. A metal chastity belt is seen being cut off a woman. A woman's bare shoulder is exposed during sewing of stitches. Hugging and holding hands also occur between characters. There is one scene of a pregnant lady giving birth, though most is shown off camera. The child is born with a deformity that may be difficult for kids to take in and understand. The umbilical cord is cut on camera. Furiosa's sexual innuendo verbal references include bollocks, testes, tits, nuts, and character names of Scrotum and Rictus Erectus. Mad Max, Fury Road is a masterpiece of a film. I don't think saying that is too far of a stretch, mind you. Out of all of the action films that were released in the 2010s, Mad Max, Fury Road was inventive, visceral, nuanced, and had an energy to it that no other film of its time, or since, has replicated. It's so good that I knew going into Furiosa that no matter how much I liked the film, it wasn't going to be better than Fury Road. It just couldn't. For the entirety of this year, I was looking forward to Furiosa. After watching crap movie after crap movie after crap movie, Furiosa was my light at the end of the tunnel. It reunites almost the entire Fury Road team, and even if the trailer had me slightly worried with its mediocre use of CG, I had faith in George Miller. Was my faith misplaced? No, but there's one thing that is imperative you understand before you go into Furiosa. It is not Fury Road. Furiosa is a prequel that shows how Imperator Furiosa became the woman she is. As a child, played by Alyla Browne, we witness how Furiosa was taken from the Green Place and became a prisoner of the leader of the biker horde, Dementus, Chris Hemsworth. While on the road seeking a place of bountiful resources, Dementus and the biker horde reach the Citadel, the home of Immortan Joe, Lachy Hulme, and declare war against him. Eventually, Furiosa becomes an adult woman, played by Anya Taylor-Joy, and we witness the extremes of the war, all the while Furiosa contemplates how she's going to escape from the wasteland and return home to the Green Place. Compared to Fury Road, Furiosa is a much denser movie from a narrative perspective. The events of the film take place over 15 years, arguably longer if you want to consider the ending sequence, and we see a lot of the politics of the wasteland present itself. While Fury Road excelled at teaching the audience about its world through the characters' actions, Furiosa tells its story more traditionally. There aren't as many pieces of ambiguous dialogue as there were in Fury Road, such as where the brides of Immortan Joe ask who killed the world, but instead it's dialogue that's blunter and to the point. Characters have in-depth conversations and negotiations. We learn the specific functions of places that were only mentioned in the previous film, like Gastown and the Bullet Farm, and it feels that the film is making an honest-to-God effort at becoming easier to follow. I'm of two minds about this. I love how much we learn about the societies that have developed in the wasteland. Before, when we were following Max, we were only visitors in this part of the world, and we were attempting to make sense of the Citadel and its purposes alongside Max. We were outsiders looking in, but Furiosa isn't an outsider here. She has lived in the Citadel for years. She has been with the biker horde for quite some time too, so it's easier for us to learn about the dynamics of each organization and become more invested in how the world develops simply through watching the events unfold alongside her. On the other hand, it does make Furiosa a much slower movie. The action is sparse, almost by design, feeling at times like the earlier Mad Max films. When Furiosa is a child, we don't see a lot of action or spectacle that you would associate with the series post-Fury Road. There's a biker chase here, a torture scene there, and a warboy being a warboy, but action is reserved for when Furiosa is an adult. And I'm not going to lie, that took a little bit of time to realize and adjust to. That testosterone is there, but it's related to the second half of the movie, and even then, you're not going to be as floored as you were when watching Fury Road. That's not because these action scenes are been there, done that, but rather they're not the main focus. Where the movie does excel though is in its emotional core. Understandably, Furiosa is the main character of this movie, and we really delve into her mind. We see the goal given to her very early in the film that she needs to return to the Green Place, and we see her grow up and become a layered and nuanced character. Granted, most of this is through Anya Taylor-Joy's acting once Furiosa becomes an adult, but the looks she gives, the decisions she makes, and the ways she interacts with people, whether it be Immortan Joe, her partner Praetorian Jack, Tom Burke, or Dementus himself, elevate her into one of the best characters of the past several years, hand down. Furiosa describes itself as an odyssey, mirrored by the 5-act structure presented in the film. It's a lengthy sit, much longer than the original Fury Road, and one that feels deliberate again. Pieces are established and eventually brought up again, but shockingly enough, I think that Fury Road handled a lot of its narrative moments better. There's just a level of artistry in Fury Road that doesn't come across here. Subtle little moments and planning that made Fury Road such a compelling watch aren't apparent here, making Furiosa blunter and more straightforward. As shocking as it is to say, Fury Road has more to say about the nature of the world than Furiosa does. That isn't to say nothing is going on under the hood in Furiosa, since it is a story about vengeance and innocence lost at its core. We see Furiosa ripped from her peaceful home and turned into this violent and destructive force, one that Dementis draws direct comparison to. There's also an attempt at using this story as a metaphor for loss in general, but it's not a cut-and-dry comparison. I do, however, see Furiosa as a great war allegory given how Dementis and the biker horde fight against the Citadel and their allies for almost the entire movie solely for the control of resources, nearly plunging the entire wasteland into chaos. But no matter how much I talk about Furiosa's themes, they're just not as compelling as the ones that Fury Road so effortlessly conveyed through its excellent script and cinematography. Speaking of, I should probably mention the technical aspects of the film, and it should come as no surprise that George Miller can shoot a great action movie. The scenes of violence towards the end are immaculately shot and show that no one can make an action movie like George Miller. It was pretty clear at moments where there were some bad shot compositions and an over-reliance on green screens at points, but those are few and far between. Much like Fury Road, most of the scenes are shot with practical effects and give this film a sense of believability and tangibility. I was surprised early into the film at how little the score was present. The droning bass and bombastic drums that defined Fury Road didn't factor in for most of the film, even when we started to get into the more action-heavy set pieces. It did create this effect that the action beats and the scenes we were watching weren't over-the-top dramatic affairs but had the inverse effect of making these moments more serious and tense. Don't worry, the beats do come and they are glorioso, and that was my takeaway after watching Furiosa. It's a strangely more compelling film than Mad Max, Fury Road. It's a movie that commanded my attention even during the film's numerous quiet moments. Despite taking some time to adjust my expectations, I was fully enamored with each little moment that presented itself in Furiosa that shaped her into the woman she would become. It trades in the bombast and masculinity for a quieter exploration of how a little girl becomes a woman and how she never forgets her heritage. I think I'll need to watch Furiosa a few more times before I can definitively say whether it's better than Fury Road, but the fact that I'm even open to that possibility shows that there's something special about Furiosa that I can't quite put my finger on yet. Yes, I made a lot of direct comparisons between the two films, probably to an unfair degree, but when you advertise yourself as a prequel to an Academy Award-winning action spectacle that was one of the most talked about movies of 2015, I'm gonna make those comparisons. Even when standing alongside its predecessor, Furiosa stands out for its commitment to telling the story it wants to tell and not just being a slapdash sequel to Fury Road that's merely a greatest hits rendition of what that movie did so well. It takes risks, numerous risks, and most of them pay off. Furiosa is an epic in every definition of the word and will keep you glued to the screen at all times. It may not be a perfect movie, but it's damn well one of the best movies that has come out this year so far. George Miller's Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga, is a unique blend of heart-pounding action and mesmerizing world-building. The film's masterful balance is evident in its action-packed set pieces, such as the thrilling desert chase and the constant, adrenaline-fueled battle atop, alongside, and even under moving vehicles. These sequences will leave you on the edge of your seat, heart-racing and breathless, contrasting with the equally compelling character exposition and quieter moments, though not many, of solitude. It captivated my audience and made the runtime fly by as fast as the motorcycles traversing in the desert. Following the cinematic triumph of Mad Max, Fury Road, Furiosa maintains the franchise's storytelling prowess, offers a fresh perspective, and unfolds a new timeline. It delves into the backstory of Furiosa, a character introduced in Fury Road, and explores her journey before the previous film's events. This continuation and evolution of the Mad Max narrative is a satisfying reassurance for moviegoers, promising a journey to intrigue and satisfy them. George Miller's directorial prowess remains as sharp as ever. He has the stamina and keen eye to orchestrate the dazzlingly constructed and flawlessly designed action sequences. Age is not stopping him. Cinematographer Simon Duggan's striking visuals immerse viewers in the apocalyptic world, a testament to his talent that has now firmly caught my attention. I needed to familiarize myself with his filmography and eagerly anticipated his future work. The top-notch sound design was impressive, providing an immersive feeling. This is a must-see on an IMAX or any PFL screen. Anya Taylor-Joy and Alyla Browne deliver performances that are not just terrific but intense, commanding, deeply nuanced, and emotionally resonant. Their portrayals of the lead characters are remarkable, leaving a lasting impression on me and engaging my audience. Even Chris Hemsworth expands his range with his performance here. I almost didn't recognize him at first. I avoided all trailers going in. Their performances left me amazed, and I thought about them long after Furiosa ended, which says something because there is a lot of spectacle to process. I don't like sand. It's coarse and rough and irritating and it gets everywhere. But it's almost the entire backdrop of Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga amongst a few beautiful set pieces. It's a landscape you see in a lot of films, just as you see a lot of revenge films, which Furiosa also is. But George Miller's flamboyant vision of a unique world is anything but conventional. Even with all of the sand, Furiosa is filled with colorful characters, bursts of imaginative design, and some of the most heated action sequences since Fury Road. Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga, is the origin story of the titular character Furiosa and how she became the fierce woman we met in Mad Max, Fury Road. I won't get into details about the story itself because the trailers were cut to prevent spoiling most of the film's plot, which I strive to do in my reviews as well. If you have not seen the other Mad Max films, you can still see Furiosa without having to watch the others. It can function as a perfect standalone film while still including pieces from the other installments of the franchise. Mad Max, Fury Road wasn't a very dialogue-heavy film, and Furiosa flows in that same vein. Anya Taylor-Joy plays the younger Furiosa, who was played by Charlize Theron in Fury Road. With around only 30 lines of dialogue, Taylor-Joy brings an emotionally raw performance of someone who fighting for their survival while trying to maintain who they are. Taylor-Joy's emotive and striking facial features bring Furiosa's emotions out in an almost animalistic way. She has a certain snarl to the way she interacts with other people after her childhood was ripped away from her. You can see it in the curl of her lip when she interacts with the world around her. While the tinier nuisances of her performance still tread over my mind, her physical performance is nothing to discount either. With such limited dialogue, as an actor, she sells so much more of who Furiosa is as she grows, with how she moves, walks, and uses weapons with more confidence as she progresses through her journey. While Anya Taylor-Joy plays Furiosa for around half of the film, Alyla Browne plays her for the earlier half of the story in her youth. She gives a fantastic performance alongside Chris Hemsworth as Dr. Dementis. Without getting too deep into spoilers, she is treated almost like an animal for a good portion, and we see the struggle she goes through after the horrors she has been put through. It's a great performance from a young actor. After seeing the film Spiderhead, I prayed to the film gods that every director would cast Chris Hemsworth in villain roles because he is incredible in them. As a physical specimen, he is already larger than life in stature and form. But he can give such an animated and bombastic performance that makes him an incredible villain. And when I tell you that he brings you to the Thunderdome with his role as Dr. Dementis, I truly mean that. His costuming by Jenny Beavan has such a unique flair that he runs with. He prances around in a cape and a leather chest piece for a large portion of the film. There is a classic villain flair to him that makes you believe he very well could be the type to tie you to the train tracks. But then he flips the switch. Hemsworth brings a performance of a much darker nature that I wasn't ready for, knowing his previous work. Underneath the character's machismo and cheese, there is a very sinister, horrible man that is portrayed wonderfully. There are scenes where you see that fun veneer wash away to reveal the real monster behind the color-soaked exterior. The scene's climatic final confrontation had me reminiscing about Rutger Hauer's speech in Blade Runner. I was truly in awe of the performance, and I hope we see more like this from Hemsworth. The primary colors of Furiosa are orange and yellow because of the apocalypse theming and the sand. With some films that would make it a bore to watch. But with George Miller's vision of this world, it's just a tapestry to paint an incredibly vibrant painting on. Where some post-apocalyptic worlds go for a more cold, realistic design approach, Miller and his team go the opposite direction. Everything in the world of Mad Max is weird, and Furiosa is no exception. For instance, we all know how important vehicles are to the series. They are cultural and religious staples in the world. So just giving your villain of the story a car or a motorcycle at this point would feel like toning it down. What this film does instead is give Dr. Dementis a chariot driven by motorcycles. That is only one of many incredible vehicles that shop up in this movie, some of which fly. They are all distinctly painted and designed to fit the world and groups around them. Everything is incredibly unique, but not only that, everything feels customized. Every character's vehicle feels like it is an extension of their self. That is an incredibly hard thing to do when there are so many things and people on screen at once. While there are so many vehicles driving around on screen at once, they are also typically in combat with one another, which leads to some incredible stunt work. The film isn't as action-heavy as its predecessor, which I think gives those scenes more room to breathe instead of it being back-to-back from start to finish. There was never a time in the film or during any of the sequences where the thought "I've seen that before" passed through my mind. Every different thing just felt brand new or a remix of ideas to form something fresh. But with all of that combat, there is a ton of explosions and something that I think is very important in the film: fire. With the world being so muted in colors, when fire is on screen it really stands out. One group called the War Boys, who are always painted white, use fire in almost everything they do, from their explosive spears or flamethrowers. It's a constant in the film that really just stands out to me because thematically, we are watching Furiosa being forged into the warrior that we met her as. There is a brilliant scene where Anya Taylor-Joy's back is pressed to a gate as flames nearly fully engulf her as she tries to stage a rescue, which she has failed to do in the past. Everything about the shot, from the costume design, to Anya's face looking into the camera, and everything around it, felt like the perfect encapsulation of the film for me. It's a world on fire, but we are seeing these small glimpses of the humanity that fights against the flames to exist. Despite everything thrown at her, Furiosa follows through on her promises until the very end. Well, this was always going to be an interesting film for me. The last entry in the Mad Max Saga, as we are now calling it, Fury Road, blasted onto the world and had a profound effect on me. It is one of those rare films that I have watched over and over again, and each time, I found a new detail I had missed before. It is in my top 10 films of all time list for a reason. This means that there was some trepidation when I walked into the theater wondering how a prequel to that film could stand up, but the second my seat reverberated with a motorcycle roar, I knew that I was in for something exciting. So, to set the scene, a young Furiosa, Alyla Browne, is living in the green land of many mothers when she comes across three bikers who have discovered their hidden sanctuary. Being captured, her mother, Charlie Fraser, chases Furiosa across the desert till they make it to the roving camp of Praetorian Jack, Chris Hemsworth. He sees her value as the one person who knows where the place of abundance is and brings her into his collection, which is where she first meets the leader of the Citadel, Immortan Joe, Lachy Hulme. The first surprise that I found with Furiosa was its structure. I was expecting a very standard opening prologue, followed by our story hitting into full gear. However, what we get is a series of vignettes that hit key points of Furiosa's, Anya Taylor-Joy, life as she grew up and became the Imperator that we know from the previous movie. It is because of this that I want to take a moment to congratulate Alyla Browne for nailing that role for young Furiosa. So much of the film is built on that opening sequence, and you need to believe that she would eat the tubing of a motorbike while it is in full flight for the rest of the film to work, and I did. Indeed, that opening captures you because it prepares you for the intensity that is going to happen throughout the film. There is a lot more ebb and flow to the pacing, so you are not in a full flight for the whole time frame. However, when it goes to 110%, it does not mess around. It sucks you in with the beautiful visuals of the Australian deep desert, engages you with the special effects that it is known for, and then kicks it out of the park with each new scenario. Can I please recommend you see this film on the most giant screen you are able to, because you will want to feel the roar of the motors reverberate in your seat as the chase begins. It is at this point that we must acknowledge that Chris Hemsworth exists and how this might be the best role he has ever done, or at least the best role I have personally seen him in. The prosthetic work and the costumes combine with his acting to create something truly remarkable. There is a character that exists purely on the strength of his bravado, a frail foundation, made more fraught but a deep sadness in his heart. We get someone who is selfishly evil while also being deeply complex. Also, with respect to Anya Taylor-Joy, she must jump into what is an iconic role and carry the second half of the film all by herself. Each of the vignettes has a different energy, and I think which one you like the most will be very personal. For me, I liked the opening sequence as we raced across the desert. Even though you know how it will end, some of you still hoped it would work out. One of the small things was how everyone instinctively scavenged or destroyed everything that fell near them. From an action perspective, there is also the flying convoy, which might be the most George Miller thing that has ever George Miller-ed. Also, Bullet Town showed how they learned from the experience of Fury Road what needs to be practical and what works as a visual effect. From a production perspective, it is just as good as the series has ever been. Tom Holkenborg's musical score hit just as hard, but they also know when silence is just as important. The production design is better than just about everything out there at the moment. It feels like a real world, one very much grounded in its Australian setting. It also helps that every actor is here for it, and it shows. While it was great to see George Miller explore more character work in this series, one area where the film does suffer is in the pacing. The end feels oddly rushed, and there is a scene where I am slightly concerned about its construction and use of AI, which I hope I am wrong about. Also, it does take a bit to get going, but I don't mind that. In the end, do we recommend Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga? Yes, we would. Now, you need to go into the film not expecting it to be Fury Road. It is a different film. However, it captivated me from the opening zoom into Australia and never let me go. If you liked Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga, we would recommend to you Dune, Part 2. George Miller never really went away for 30 years between Mad Max movies like it was implied upon the release of Fury Road. The original trilogy were 3 of the first 4 movies of the 13 he directed in his 45 years career. He also adapted John Updike's novel The Witches of Eastwick, made a miserable biopic starring Nick Nolte called Lorenzo's Oil and Somehow Babe. Yes, the children movie about the little pig. My point is, George Miller is not a genius, but he managed the lifespan of a great idea like one. There was no way Fury Road wouldn't work because it basically captured the thrills of the original with the technical means and creative sensibilities of a different era. In many ways, it was probably more like the movie he originally envisioned Road Warrior to be than even the original Road Warrior. In that sense, Furiosa, a Mad Max story had no chance in hell to recapture the buzz over Fury Road, but it did a decent job at being the cinematographic equivalent of an expansion pack for it. It's not great, but it's alright, and perhaps it should stop there for a couple other decades. until we have something more to say about the collapse of society and the end of the world. Furiosa, a Mad Max story is exactly what the title says it is. An origin story of Furiosa, Anya Taylor-Joy, originally played by Charlize Theron, a one-armed wasteland warrior who grew up as a hostage to a wayward biker hilariously named Dementus, played with remarkable nuance by Chris Hemsworth, who happened to murder her mom. He ends up trading her to Fury Road's villain Immortan Joe, Lachy Hulme, where she proves herself as a useful soldier until she finally gets a shot at getting even with her old foe. Furiosa, a Mad Max story's best asset and worst problem is that it's exactly what you think it is. A 2 hours long empowering feminist film that lives in a borrowed paradigm. I don't want to bitch about female empowerment, women have earned to have their own tales, but this film deserved to have more of an identity of its own. There's more than one way to be badass. But this iteration of Furiosa was closer to Max from Fury Road than she was to Charlize Theron's character. So, the movie ends up being a long, slickly shot series of action scenes with 1 or 2 atmospheric corkers put it for good use. It's always Hemsworth leading them, but it's a great series of slickly shot action scenes. It's fun, it's cartoonish, and there's even a long chase scene that really could have been recycled from Fury Road. I'm generally trying to judge a movie for what it is, but my problem with Furiosa, a Mad Max story is that it's nothing precise. At least not in essence. Its identity markers are superficial. But it's good. It's competent. There's a great action scene in a place called the Bullet Farm where a motorcycle, a van, and a monster truck face off. It's breathless and alive, but it's also cartoonish at the same time. Whenever there's a sandstorm rising, Furiosa, a Mad Max story takes an atmospheric quality it should have nurtured more. I also loved the religious subtext surrounding Dementus, which was a nice detail nuancing an otherwise wacky character. He was ambiguous until he wasn't. What about the feminism, right? What about Furiosa's deliverance? Well, she doesn't do a lot of talking throughout the movie and she does most of it when she's a child, but I found the great, impactful moments to be fine. But kind of overwrought. It reeked of workshopping. That's what happened when you have a movie claiming to be feminist being essentially written by 2 men. It means well, but it's drained dry of spontaneity. It crumbles under the weight of its own, self-imposed responsibility. Whatever happened to Patty Jenkins who nailed it with the first Wonder Woman? Was she unavailable for consultation? It's a minor tragedy because stuff like that should not attract attention to itself. It should be weaved in the fabric of a movie and almost subconsciously affect people it's targeted towards, but Furiosa, a Mad Max story makes in big neon letters a check it's too self-conscious to cash. It's not the first time Warner Brothers drops the ball like this. Maybe we should cool it with the ideological marketing. I guess that I didn't really like Furiosa, a Mad Max story. I wanted to like it more than I did, but can you really enjoy a movie that delivers exactly what you think it's going to deliver and not in a specifically slick or empowering way? Had it not taken 9 years to make, I would have said it was just a rushed cash-in. Apparently George Miller wanted to film this movie back-to-back with Fury Road also, which kind of makes sense. It just feels very weird, derivative, and disconnected despite being technically tip-top. If you're gonna make a film that champions women empowerment, make one that matters. It takes a genuinely special kind of genius to make a prequel that's also the 5th film in a series and the first one of those films to be in direct, unambiguous narrative continuity with one of the others, and still have the main takeaway be this is unprecedented and unexpected in every possible way, and whatever I thought this was going to be, it wasn't that, and it was better. We do not, I hope, have to still doubt whether George Miller is a genius, particularly when he's making a Mad Max film, and despite my early apostasy in thinking that his latest film was a bad idea when I first heard about it, I still can't feign any real surprise that Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga is extremely good. Moreover, it is extremely good in ways that find the 79-year-old director continuing to do new stuff with this material, 45 years after the first Mad Max, and 42 years after Mad Max 2 sort of invented the post-apocalyptic action movie, or at any rate created the specific template that approximately 9,000 subsequent filmmakers ripped off. What is, I think, a surprise, and a pretty good one, is that one of the main ways that Furiosa is an unpredictable zigzag for the Mad Max series is that it's actually much closer to a direct evolution from Miller's last film, 2022's 3,000 Years of Longing. It may in fact not be too idiotic of a reach to call it something like a remake of that movie using the world building and color palette of 2015's Mad Max, Fury Road. Whether that sounds like the generous compliment I mean for it to be is undoubtedly a matter of personal taste, but I think it fits. 3,000 Years of Longing, at its core, is a story in chapters about the transmission of myths across time. So too is Furiosa, and to be sure, the idea of myth-making and understanding the present moment as the culmination of a mythic story isn't actually new to the Mad Max series. Mad Max 2 is explicitly about this, and Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome is implicitly but getting pretty overt about this as well. What sets Furiosa gently apart from those two films and puts it closer to 3,000 Years of Longing is that the subject of the myth is the protagonist's own life history, and the construction of the myth is a conscious act on the character's part. Mad Max 2 is told from a perspective in which Max has already become the stuff of myth. Furiosa is told from a perspective within the myth itself. And there are more straightforward lifts from 3,000 years than that. The most readily obvious is that Miller and co-writer Nico Lathouris have structured their screenplay as a collection of 5 chapters, separated by lengthy ellipses that condense many years, though not, in this case, 3,000 of them, into what ends up feeling rather like a collection of extended anecdotes than a conventionally well-built story. It's so precisely the opposite of Fury Road's structure of 2 uninterrupted hours of a single chase scene that I wonder if it's intentional. I am absolutely certain that the one big car chase set piece here is precisely the opposite of Fury Road on purpose, though this is mostly irrelevant to how well I think it works in this context. For this movie, the way that Miller and Lathouris allow us to drop in and soak up the grand, doom-saturated vibes of this epic about life in post-apocalyptic Australia is an exceptionally rewarding way to speed-run the cultural evolution of that post-apocalypse, which was done in greater length across the first 4 Mad Max movies, while preserving the fairy tale-like feeling of an endless present. The other big lift from 3,000 years is that this has some fucking nutsy technique. In the wake of the immaculate precision and purity of Fury Road, this generally has much stranger cameras set UPS, and if the whole point of the 2015 movie, or, at least, its oversimplifying marketing campaign, was to celebrate practical filmmaking, Furiosa is apparently motivated by Miller's delight in learning how much latitude digital production and post-production can give him. There was some grousing in the run-up to Furiosa's release. I contributed to it, but not in print and not publicly, that it looked pretty CGI forward, and this turns out to have been entirely missing the point, not because the CGI looks fake, as I would say that it mostly doesn't at all, but because overly processed digital visuals are something this movie is leaning into as part of its aesthetic strategy. It has a kind of janky, unsteady quality, one that makes it feel, and I apologize to my Australian readership, more Australian in some way, more in tune with the loopy cartoons of that nation's weird and wonderful history of eccentric exploitation cinema. Fury Road erases its Australian-ness in a way that no other Mad Max film does. In contrast, I have never been more keenly aware since the first Mad Max of where this is meant to take place. That has a lot to do with the script. It has an enormous fucking amount to do with Chris Hemsworth's unhinged and delightful performance as this movie's crazy wasteland lunatic bad guy, Dementus. But I frankly think it has a lot to do with the giddiness and let's just try it. Haha, nope, but it was cool so keep it anyway quality to the image making, a joyful sloppiness that makes everything feel like it's vibrating a little bit. Much of the greatest Australian cinema isn't mercilessly perfect. The way Fury Road is, it has an aesthetic scrappiness that Furiosa has managed to recreate despite an exorbitant budget that has obliged it, at least ostensibly, to be a globally appealing tentpole. But back to that fascinating storytelling technique, in which we get little slices of mythic time that evolve the titular character, played as a child by Alyla Browne, as a young woman by Anya Taylor-Joy, from savvy child of the post-apocalyptic wasteland to the unyielding force of survivalist idealism played by Charlize Theron in the previous movie. The crafty thing about this is that it manages to be a character study while also treating its character more as the shoulder we're riding on to tour this world. In essence, Furiosa's character development is less about a conventional narrative arc per se than it is about growing more sophisticated in navigating this landscape, and this is expressed through the film not necessarily by the things that Furiosa does, but in the amount and clarity of detail in the world building and narrative. In other words, the first chapter, where she is relatively innocent, is the most vague and vibes driven, and by the end we have a fairly complex understanding of the political maneuvering of the major powers at play here and in Fury Road. And this complexity does not necessarily come through Furiosa, but the more we learn about the shape and function of this world, the more power she has to control her own fate within it. As someone for whom good, dense, sophisticated world building is a top-tier pleasure of genre film, I am frankly besotted by how well Furiosa deepens its universe and does so in a way where it's always pretty clear what's happening, but never in a hand-holding, as we both know, Mr. the Bullet Farmer, the way that gasoline is rationed in this political. It's the kind of filmic storytelling where the filmmakers are controlling our knowledge pretty precisely, but at the same time it feels like we get to be clever for picking up on the details, and that is a wonderful place for a popcorn movie to get to. Of course, Furiosa gets to cheat on all of this by being a direct prequel, though in a different way than I was expecting. It does, at the end, in a brief epilogue, get us exactly to the point where it stitches up to Fury Road, and this is one of its weakest aspects. Another one is that I think the version of Furiosa we meet here is less interesting than the one I always understood from that movie. My read on Theron's Furiosa was that she was complicit with the horrible regime we saw as a matter of her own comfort, and the events of that movie were her act of contrition. Now we find that she was in fact planning to destroy the regime more or less the whole time, as her own survival permitted. But for the most part, and unlike so many popcorn movie prequels, Furiosa never feels like it's trying to set up Fury Road. It's more that it's assuming Fury Road so that it can jump ahead of the point where it has to lay all of the foundations, and just get right to broadening and deepening the material built upon those foundations. Basically, rather than a craven people like that, so they'll come back dutifully to see some minor points expanded on mentality, as is true of most prequels. This feels like Miller wanted to make a years-spanning epic about one soul doggedly navigating an unlivable world, and he conveniently had an unlivable world all spooled up and ready to go. And as far as returning to the Mad Max world, on a purely experiential level, this is superb stuff. Jenny Beavan's costumes once again do an enormous amount of work in suggesting the kind of resources available to different groups of people. Production designer Colin Gibson's sets once again show us how the world functions at a mechanical level, especially in the new location of Gastown, which is one of the most intuitively correct locations in a post-apocalypse film I have ever seen. Sort of a "this is how it would have been if we'd had more money to build it" version of the central location in Mad Max 2. And as far as mechanical demonstrations go, this film's big car chase, the beating heart of any Mad Max movie, is a brilliant inversion of the ones in Fury Road, replacing dementedly fast but hyper-focused editing with long, sinuous takes that allow us to see how all of the components in a Mad Max car chase are fitted together organically. Which isn't to say that returning editor Margaret Sixel and newly promoted co-editor Elliot Knappman aren't pulling their weight. The cutting is superb here, both in the action scenes and everywhere else, but it's fascinating to see analytical editing replaced by analytical camera movement, particularly when everything is moving as fast as it is here. I would certainly not have expected nor required the car action in Furiosa to be another reinvent the wheel gesture from Miller and his crew in order to find the movie a worthwhile addition to the franchise with the best car chases in cinema history, so the fact that it has, in fact, shown us a brand new way to do Mad Max car chases is maybe the most above and beyond triumph of a movie that spends all of its indulgent, Mostly well-managed running time going above and beyond. If you ever took a class on the Greek classics, you might remember that the epics of Homer are defined by their first words. The Odyssey is the story of a man, while the Iliad is a story of munaiota, which is often translated as wrath, rage, or fury. The epics of George Miller barely need words at all, yet Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga, is the Iliad to Fury Road's stripped-down Odyssey. The latter's elegant straight-line structure is replaced with lush chapters, documenting the interconnected systems of post-apocalyptic nation gangs through the years. Through it all, a Dickensian hero clings to this world's seedy undercarriage. Reducing Furiosa down to a single word does it as little justice as it does the sagas it scraps, welds, and reuses like its countless Frankenstein vehicles. But understanding George Miller's Fury Road prequel as the story of war of sprawling futility, driven by the same cyclical cruelty that turned its deserts into wastelands, makes it far more than a satisfying origin story. Though, it's that too. Furiosa speaks the language of epics fluently, raging against timeless human failure while carrying a seed of hope. While any structure would be more complex than a pair of perfect car chases, Furiosa's script necessarily evolves to match its more expansive narrative. That said, Miller and co-writer Nico Lathouris still aren't here to coddle us with over-explanation or endless Easter eggs. I don't want to know how the world fell, or how Furiosa got her name. I want to meet a piss-wielding boy named Pissboy. Characters named Scrotus, Toejam, and Smeg patrol the roads. Janky flying machines fully free Fury Road's polecats from gravity. A gruesome maggot farm scars us in its brief seconds on screen. The filmmakers know that the best details are plot irrelevant and the best plot is what happens to someone we care about. What we learn through the eyes of Furiosa, from the moment she's ripped from the green place of many mothers as a child, to the second before she tears out of Immortan Joe's citadel, smuggling Fury Road stowaways. As Furiosa grows from traumatized child, Alyla Browne, to damaged adult, Anya Taylor-Joy, she survives the slave labor bowels of the citadel, claws her way into a position aboard a trade caravan and waits for the perfect moment to enact revenge upon her initial captor, the chaotic, power-hungry biker warlord Dementus, Chris Hemsworth. Where Immortan Joe has the detached power of a god, Dementus is a nutty rascal whose manic cruelties swagger through a world built to be his playground. Both men think the healthy, willful novelty Furiosa would make an excellent addition to their inner circle, as a successor, a trophy, or something in between. Pushing back on the various men who hunt them, Browne and Taylor-Joy's performances work in stunning tandem, steadily heating the steely young girl's resolve until it turns molten. Browne coils and pounces, while Taylor-Joy's physicality is more refined and sure-footed. You can even feel the influence of Charlie Fraser, who leaves a strong impression in her brief scenes as Furiosa's mother. All three beam stares into the screen that would set celluloid on fire. Every hard edge Furiosa has in Fury Road is sharpened here, and every moment of tenderness given deeper roots. Furiosa might actually speak less in this movie than in Fury Road, which makes what her two performers pull off even more impressive. When you match the most powerful eyes in the business with Miller's evocative framing, Furiosa is shot a bit like Galadriel's brush with evil in Lord of the Rings. Somewhere between Avenging Angel and Frank Miller cover, you get all the character you need. Furiosa is also defined in contrast to the villains she resists and the rare allies she sticks her neck out for. This is part of Miller's more grandiose vision, one of broken systems and the people they consume. These systems collide when Dementus drives his motorcycle chariot, which, yes, someone is eventually lashed to like the corpse of Hector, straight into the uneasy trade alliance between Immortan Joe's fertile citadel, the munition-heavy bullet farm and the black gold of Gastown. This wild card brings war, and we see this war through Furiosa's pursuit of freedom. The battles are personal, and the political conflict we're shown with any intimacy, outside of wreckage and montage, are the negotiations and ambitions that disrupt the status quo. As Furiosa bides her time, the collapsed world around her falls further into an ID-driven sinkhole. Miller isn't implying that everything was hunky-dory under the more stable dictators, but that the chaos born from a power struggle really only impacts those on the ground. Pale war boy bodies stack in mounds and those crawling in the dirt have even less to scramble for. We get closer to the cogs in these murder machines than in Fury Road, Miller using the plight of this world's oppressed to make the sweeping gestures of mythic storytelling that touches on our times because it touches on all times. This makes Furiosa's brief connections with Praetorian Jack, Tom Burke, the proto-imperator who takes Furiosa's shotgun in her first war rig, and with Dementus, the worst-case endpoint for her traumatic life all the more meaningful. Her relationship with Jack, one of begrudging trust, respect, and loyalty, making her later, uneasy warmth with Max all the better, is perfectly measured and tantalizingly hopeful. Her hatred for Dementus, one tugging her closer into nihilism, is perfectly dangerous. Hemsworth, by the way, is set up with the film's golden role. Dementus is basically all final bad guy speeches, right from the start, and gets to play everything from killer Looney Tune to hollowed-out tyrant. He'll tear off a fantastic run of lines, then cackle and mug as the bullets fly past. While the action is more sporadic than operatic this time around, Miller's still got a lead foot when it's time to fight. Simon Duggan's camera is constantly rushing at faces, up car grills, across ravines to see who's about to get sniped. The bright colors blast your eyes and days bleed into nights with graceful flourishes. The driving is still otherworldly. The effects are still mind-boggling, rapid fire, and range from stylishly over the top to completely invisible. The stunts are still suicidal, choreographed and planned so that you can tell at a glance what each body swarming over an ass-hauling war rig is trying to accomplish. That guy, flying something out of the Wright brothers' nightmares, is trying to set the driver on fire. Pissboy is trying to reach the piss-thirsty engine. Each action scene, whether another amazing chase or a desperate rescue mission deep in enemy territory, is driven just as deeply by visual logic as by spectacle. These stunning visions of neo-medieval torture in Hell's Junkyard only work if we can make sense of it all. Furiosa is a film well planned and deeply dreamed. These are the qualities that make Furiosa, a Mad Max saga unlike so many other prequels in so many other sagas. It isn't an afterthought, and it isn't a cash grab. It's slower and more unwieldy than the circus act precision of Fury Road, but these movies make each other richer. Fury Road is not the Odyssey, just like Furiosa is not the Iliad. But they speak to the same parts of our souls. There is love and therefore loss, hate and therefore empty revenge, power and therefore challenges to that power. Miller's movies strip folkloric epics down to their basic mechanical parts, functional skeletons that run on raw emotion like the war machines running on piss and gasoline. Very few films reach the status of masterpiece right out of the gate, and even fewer films hold onto that reputation in the long term. Mad Max, Fury Road, 2015, is one of those few, immediately being hailed as a classic and widely called one of the greatest films ever made. The jaw-dropping action, gripping direction, propulsive energy, and surprisingly emotional storytelling all came together into a wholly unique and groundbreaking experience. So this begs the question, is it possible for any follow-up film to live up to that? Thus, director George Miller's prequel, Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga, 2024, has quite the mountain to climb. Many years after the collapse of civilization, Australia is now a deserted, radioactive wasteland. Only a few areas remain with any water or agriculture, one of which being the green place of many mothers. Here we meet a young Furiosa, Anya Taylor-Joy, many years before her time as the heroic warrior in Mad Max, Fury Road. Furiosa's fruitful childhood is cut short when a gang of rogue bikers kidnap her and take her to their leader Dementus, Chris Hemsworth, who wants nothing more than to achieve total dominance of the wasteland. In an attempt to rescue her, Furiosa's mother, Mary Jabasa, Charlie Fraser, is murdered by Dementus. As such, Furiosa must learn to survive in this lawless land, while never forgetting her mission to avenge her mother, and return home. Most long-running film franchises bend over backwards to maintain a strict continuity, but the Mad Max series is not a typical franchise. Despite the intense grit and hard-hitting action, Miller has always told these stories with a mythic tone, portraying them as fables to be told around a campfire. Max was always described by the narration and characters as a hero in folklore, and Miller has dialed that up to 11 with Furiosa. While being the only film in the series which lines up its events with the previous entry, Furiosa, a Mad Max saga is filled with allusions to Greek, Roman, Norse, and Chinese legends, making it abundantly clear that these are mythic stories passed down through generations. There are of course plenty of action sequences, all of which deliver the exciting car wrecks and shootouts we want from a Mad Max film. Even at nearly 80 years old, Miller directs these sequences with more excitement than most younger filmmakers. However, there's an overabundance of computer-generated effects, which is a little too noticeable throughout. Contrary to popular belief, a large amount of CGI was used in Mad Max, Fury Road, but it was used to seamlessly stitch all of the incredible in-camera stunt work and effects together. This time, it feels like majority of the action was created with computers and green screens. To be fair, this is only an issue when compared to Mad Max, Fury Road, an impossible standard, as Furiosa, a Mad Max saga's visual effects are still more striking than the majority of blockbusters, even when they don't feel realistic. That being said, the film's status as a prequel needs to be addressed, as there's only so much growth the characters can have if we already know where they end up. The main issue with most prequels is that they waste time explaining where the hero gained their famous clothes, weapons, skills, and lines, while failing to actually tell an interesting story. Furiosa, a Mad Max saga still falls into the trap of listing where Furiosa gained all of her iconic elements, yet Miller does manage to craft a compelling journey out of it. The result is that the film does indeed have its own epic adventure, yet it still requires the viewer to have seen Mad Max, Fury Road. The character drama is another place where Furiosa, a Mad Max saga separates itself from its predecessor. Mad Max, Fury Road is iconic for its perfect blend of nuanced character development and breathless action, but Furiosa, a Mad Max saga takes a less energetic approach. Given how powerful Mad Max, Fury Road was, this was the smartest choice for Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, as there was very little chance it would ever eclipse the former. This does at times feel as though Furiosa, a Mad Max saga is slacking off in comparison to Mad Max, Fury Road, but the more subdued action does have a purpose. Where once we were right in the thick of battle, we are now placed as observers of the chaos. The film often fades over the dramatic action in favor of seeing the characters prepare for battle, or deal with the aftermath. While this does feel like we're skipping over the things we want to see, the intention is to allow the viewer to think more about the philosophical stakes, which Miller isn't shy about making clear through exposition. As with every fable, the heroes and villains carry the story, and Furiosa, a Mad Max saga has a wonderful cast of talented actors bringing them to life. Charlize Theron gave us an action hero for the ages when she played Furiosa in Mad Max, Fury Road, so Anya Taylor-Joy has massive shoes to fill. Happily, she's more than up to the task, perfectly embodying the character as she transforms from shrewd survivor, to avenger, to mythic hero. Chris Hemsworth also does great work as the villainous Dementus, delivering a heartless, sadistic monster who is simultaneously funny, pathetic, and abhorrent. It's interesting to see an antagonist who's actually not very skilled at being a warlord, but that doesn't make him any less evil. Taylor-Joy and Hemsworth completely own the film, but the smaller role by Tom Burke as a Mad Max-esque general is no less memorable, despite his character needing more development. This film, directed by George Miller, written by George Miller, based on characters, produced by Doug Mitchell, starring Anya Taylor-Joy, cinematography Simon Duggan, edited by Elliot Knappman, music by Tom Holkenborg, production company Kennedy Miller Mitchell, distributed by Warner Brothers. Pictures. Release dates May 15, 2024. Running time 148 minutes. Countries United States. Language English. Budget $168 million. Box office $174.4 million.